ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13 ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
And hi, good Sunday afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Roundtable program. A happy Father's Day to all those fellow dads out there. Hope you're enjoying it in this nice summer weather we're experiencing. Well, we like to talk about the economy a lot here on the Roundtable and the ebbs and the flows. And one of the flows that we've been watching over the last few years here in the state, well, the increasing number of movies that have been produced here in the state of Ohio, a number of film commissions that have set up around the state, but not so much here in the Toledo area. But we look back to the past to kind of reflect on the future and what is to be here in the Toledo area. And do you remember this? Back in 1998, Comedy Central and The Daily Show, hosted by Craig Kilborn at the time, featuring a story about our fair city and its mayor at the time, Carty Finkbeiner, and his call that he put out for Toledo to be a movie mecca. Listen.
Plan to turn Toledo, Ohio into the Hollywood of the Middle West.
Toledo as the film mecca?
Delighted to have us called the new film mecca of the Midwest.
Why not Toledo?
Why not Toledo?
So was the mayor being prophetic at the time? During this piece, they drove around town with the top down in the middle of March. I'm sure that was a cool drive at the time. But once again, it kind of brought to the forefront something that we're really thinking about today. And I'm so glad to have with us, joining us from Los Angeles, California on the phone today, is the executive director, president of the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. His name is Ivan Schwartz, and he's joining us now on the phone. Ivan, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Let's get into the crux of conversation. Over the last few weeks, we have seen the state of Ohio, once again, Governor Kasich signing into legislation. We're upping the ante once again on the tax incentive dollars that are out there for film producers. $20 million over the next 2 years. That's 40 total. But upping the ante on getting these movies produced here. How much of an economic boost is it to Ohio?
Well, I mean, having the incentive, having the incentive doubled, it allows us to be competitive. Otherwise, we would have gotten some, it allows us to go after more studio films and larger films that bring more money, hire more people, and use our local goods and services. And that's really what this incentive is driving to do, is to, increase our population, keep young people engaged in the community, and create jobs and bring new businesses that don't exist in the state of Ohio to Ohio.
You know, Ivan, we're looking at video here in the studio at The Avengers, which was shot in the Cleveland area, and obviously a huge boon for you guys to grab the production for that one. You know, last year alone, the Ohio Department of Development tells us that there were over 9,500 jobs created here in the state of Ohio because of films that were being produced. Yet, I do want to point out there were 3 major big budget films that were produced here in the state. And as we look at the list over the last 3 years, sitting there at home, I'm sure you recognize the first 3, Unstoppable, Ides of March, and Avengers. And then in the next year, summer production is already going on with movies called I, Alex Cross, Crooked Tree, and A Doll's House. So we're looking at these not only smaller films, but these big budget operations coming to the Buckeye State.
You know, having the Avengers was an amazing thing to happen to our state. It brought a lot of attention to Ohio, which is incredibly important that people, who didn't, people don't necessarily have a negative perception of Ohio or Cleveland. They really have no perception. And this really, allowed us to become a player, so to speak, in the industry. Now, having said that, all the movies that film here account for those 9,000 jobs. We conducted a study with Cleveland State, that showed that, there were 9,000 jobs, but, full-time equivalent jobs ended up where the number was 1,300 full-time equivalent jobs in the state of Ohio that didn't exist before in this industry. $113 million that never would have seen the light of day in the state of Ohio was spent in Ohio. I could speak specifically to Cleveland. $87 million was spent in Cleveland. In this study, we have anecdotal reports from people saying, that their homes were saved, their businesses were saved, and that people made a lot of money from these movies. And that's what this is all about. This is not about necessarily the movie stars and the glitz and glamour, which are a fallout from having this, coming here. Mm-hmm. I look at it as straight up manufacturing. It's a jobs creation bill that will create jobs, keep young people engaged in our state so they don't have to go elsewhere, and create economic development.
And Ivan, I wanted to put up Jonathan and Mark in the control room. If we can show the next graphic for folks there at home, I want to point out a little bit this Ohio Motion Picture Tax Credit that we're talking about. In fact, back in 2011, once again, there was $20 million available, and over $16 million of it was allocated, granted dollars to these projects, 15 total projects in the year 2011. And as we pointed out earlier, 9,500 plus jobs were created from these movies. And then this year alone, there was a total of $10 million allocated, a little cutback, a little drawback as far as the state, those dollars that were put out. 10 total projects here in the year 2012 and over 1,200 jobs created by these. So we're really talking about a trickle-down economy as far as getting these projects and then seeing all of the ancillary businesses and jobs that come off of it. There are a lot of branches to this, aren't there?
Yeah, no, I mean, jobs that people don't think about. I mean, the guy who power cleans the street. There was a woman who literally was the person that went in after every location and cleaned up the location, and she did all the movies that came into Cleveland. These are not just grip, and electricians and crew jobs. These are the ancillary businesses that they hire as well to do, dry cleaning, restaurants, food distribution, car rentals, hotels, Starbucks, restaurants, laundry services, all those things benefit. They may not be what we typically think as movie jobs, but they're all jobs attributed to the film industry. We had a report that one of the businesses, their business increased, 77% while all this filming was going on in the last 2 years in Northeast Ohio. And you can't argue with those, it's not like 15% or 4%. It just shows the impact. The reason to double the credit is so that we can have a long-term sustainable industry, and that we show Hollywood that we're in this for the long haul, not just, dabbling in it. And if we show that, this will increase.
Being lost in the shuffle, and as I should have created a graphic showing the state of Ohio, because obviously you're on the ground in Cleveland. You've got 20 plus years experience in the film industry, having Hollywood roots. And as you look around the state, you've got Cleveland, you've got a film commission that's operating full steam ahead in Cincinnati. Columbus, Dayton is kind of a bootstraps operation from the ground up, and you said that one is really getting going. But we really don't have any traction here in the city of Toledo going out and looking for these types of scenarios. And Mr. Schwartz, I'll tell you, joining us once again on the phone from Los Angeles, California today, I will tell you once again that the city of Toledo has told me time and time again, it is not at the top of our totem pole, if you will, as far as rankings on going out there and finding these types of projects. However, I have been told by the city administration here, we're not going to turn away anybody who comes to us and says, we have this project, we would like you to write a letter, we would like you to, get this street cordoned off so we can do. They're not going to be an impediment, but I guess talk to us if you're to be the bellwether for us on how to get this thing going here in Toledo. I guess I'll just ask the simple question. How do you get it going in a town like Toledo?
Well, I mean, when movies come, we helped Unstoppable, which was one of the first movies to come here, and it's really about relationships. I knew the producer of the movie. I knew the locations people. And when they first came here, they had called me because we were they knew, it was just somebody that they knew. And it's not necessarily within our jurisdiction, but, we'll help anybody anywhere. And, I'm not going to, if Toledo's going after a project, I'm not going to go, oh, you need to come to Cleveland because we need to do this. What I'd rather do is help Toledo do a really good job so that more people want to come to your area. I think that, everybody's like, do you feel like you're in competition with all the other film commissions? The truth is we're not. I mean, the movies that have gone to Cincinnati have gone to Cincinnati. The movies that have come to Cleveland, they came out because, I go to Los Angeles 5 times a year. I have, pretty deep relationships here, and people know me. So part of the reason they're coming to Cleveland is not just because it's Cleveland, but because I have those relationships, or I've nurtured those relationships for 4 years. When the Avengers came, it wasn't that they just called Cleveland out of the blue. I had a relationship with those producers for 5 years prior to getting that call. Overnight success 5 years later. So it's really about maintaining and developing those relationships so that people even know you're there and what you have to offer. What I would offer up is like, come talk to us, work with us, help us sell your area. I mean, the way I look at it is, Northeast Ohio is kind of what I feel like is our area. I mean, because people will call us, and if they're looking for something in Toledo, we're going to help Toledo do the best job that they can to make sure that they're successful and that productions walk away with a happy feeling.
How much hand do you have as a commission executive director, president, in seeing projects? You mentioned Unstoppable, which our newsroom lived through. I was here when that train rushed through North Baltimore, Ohio, and obviously we hear kind of post-production wise that a lot of that movie, those scenes which happened in our backyard, were shot in Pennsylvania or elsewhere.
Right.
And Hollywood does a lot of that. Obviously, Cleveland was supposed to be the Avengers shot in Cleveland was supposed to be a New York backdrop. So what's the mentality behind using these other locales to recreate reality? I mean, if you're going to shoot in Ohio, you want an Ohio-based movie, why not be physically there?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One is it comes down to dollar. Economics, where do they get the best incentive? They're always chasing the money. But two, that is like, that's so secondary. What should be in the forefront of our mind is creating jobs and economic development. If for me, if a movie never, ever, ever gets released and nobody ever sees it, but they spend $2 million or $5 million in Cleveland and they use local labor and local goods and services, we won. The state as a whole won. We employed people, they spent their money, and people have jobs, and then they go on with their lives and go on to the next project. Now, the fact that the Avengers wasn't Cleveland, I really, it's not important to me. It's not important that a movie has to be Toledo. If Toledo can play for New York and they're spending their money there and they're hiring your locals and using your local goods and services and staying in your hotels and eating at your restaurants and using your dry cleaners and using your fuel, then that's what we need to consider a win. That's how we need to measure this. This is economic development. This is not about, storytelling.
It's interesting as well how much money has been paid out. We talked about these jobs earlier and how much money has been paid out around the state of Ohio. Mark and Jonathan, let's show that next graphic to folks at home as far as what the film industry has paid out in wages. Look at that number. It's staggering. Over $11 million paid out to film industry workers. And as you heard from Mr. Schwartz joining us via phone out in L.A., he's telling us there are so many branches to the jobs that need to be done, from the actors to the street cleaners who are there every single day, to the dry cleaners. Mr. Schwartz, hang on with us. We're going to take our first break. If you could stay with us, we'll have our second segment coming up. We'll continue the conversation here on the economic impact of filming movies here in the Buckeye State and what's it going to take to get them here in Toledo. We'll be right back.